Tearing brick by brick through the walls of your mind, we are the Ferrocrete crushing claws of acoustic vehemence, the true sound of Underhive Rebellion, 665.66 UHMR Chemrat Radio. Broadcasting live tonight from the Old Knight, with a beautiful view of all of Armageddon Memorial Park. Nothing quite boosts the signal like old age-frozen Adaptus tech.
And you know what, Gobbo? The Cog Boys aren't going to be happy with you talking like that about their god. Or, at least not happier than the Arbites are, with the newest victim of the Corridor 54 killer. The murder of a Spire brat slumming it in the Underhive isn't the only kind of murder on our minds, as the Sump That Rat Catchers enter the semifinals in tonight's murder ball game.
And what's better than watching the Rat Catchers take on the Minuet Hive Fury Goths than seeing it at the park on a 3-floor tall pick screen? If you aren't here now, drop what you're doing and make it to this block party. Bringing you up-to-date Murder Ball coverage, I am the unhinged organic disaster the local tech adapts warned you about, Goblin King, joined by the dark alley miscreant of second hand, and sometimes that's exactly what they are, parts, Marky.
Olo.
Always planning an ever bigger explosive display, or at least a few fistfuls of extra autogun action, it's Beast.
Hell yeah, dude.
And we are joined tonight by the ever lovely Midnight Poison Dart herself, who also strikes at midnight, Emmy.
Hello, everyone.
You picked Splatterhawk, sorry.
I sure did. I sure did.
I always like to think of myself. I always like to think of myself as like that pumpkin, you know. At midnight, I just get uglier. It just happens.
I can't remember, but there was something at one point where it was like the Midnight Killer with strikes at midnight, and I was always like, why the fuck would you name it the Midnight Killer and then point out that he kills at midnight? What's the point?
It's for people like me that forget, Ryan, okay? That's what it's really about.
It's the same reason people always say that I have a kidnapper van. I'm like, if it's so conspicuous that it's a kidnapper van, wouldn't it be bad at kidnapping?
Do you remember killfrog.com?
Oh, God, that sounds so familiar.
So It was one of those old Flash websites that had, like pre-YouTube, it just had a bunch of little, like, Flash animations on it. And one of the characters on Killfrog was he was just called the Doctor, and he had a van, and it had no windows. And there was like one time when he's talking, it was like that era, and it was one of the times where he was talking where he was like, I like the vans without the windows. And it was oh my God, that. Really, dude?
I remember that. I like to touch rusty spoons with my salad fingers.
Yes, okay, yeah, and then there was like Spoilsbury Toast Boy, salad fingers, yeah.
It was that era.
Dark YouTube.
I like
a lot of that
bum fights.
A lot of that stuff predated YouTube. Like it was all this stuff that was like on the early internet, and then it was dragged. Anyway.
I loved that with bum fights when he went on Dr. Phil, the guy who like recorded it, and he dressed up as Dr. Phil. And he's like, wait, you think that me like taking these guys and having them do stuff that's like uncomfortable and like exposing themselves is exploitation? And he's like, so what the fuck do you do?
Yeah, right.
And I was like, dude, I just remember it was like, oh, you know, like.
Welcome to Under the Hive of Madness. Today we are continuing with our coverage of the Tyranid race here with part 2. We are honored to have Emmy joining us to go over the Nids and all of their gross bugginess.
Are we honored?
We are.
We're super honored.
That's super
Tom.
Honored. So last time in part 1 with our openings, we gave all of our impressions with the Nids, but we didn't get your take. So we need your take before we continue.
Okay, so I read your notes from last time, and I have some follow-up questions about the Tyranids. So my big question is, if basically no one can survive a trip through a Tyranid hive ship, how do we know what they look like?
So the notes have that, G-Dub has that thing where they're like, no one can survive, but the few who have tell of, like they always do that little thing. I believe most of that comes from the Death Watch.
Okay, that makes sense.
To give you a more direct answer.
You think it would be like those ones where it's like when a whale washes on shore, like when they kill one in space, they're like, "Oh God,
That's
damn
true.
it."
Yeah, so
maybe Magi biologists have gone inside.
if it
Yeah.
is through like the Death Watch, for example, the the specialist in killing all things Xenos, they actually have like when they recover bodies and whatnot, they recover the footage and they use that footage for training for the people that they indoctrinate, or the Space Marines that they indoctrinate, so that way they show them how they died so they can learn from that.
That's
So-
pleasant.
Yeah, it's great.
And then,
What is
like,
it?
how-
Like a Clockwork
Yeah.
Orange? Is that what it is?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And then, like, how on earth is the Imperium making a field guide for this? They're like, oh, let me sketch this here. Like, they don't have, like, what are they doing? Are they photographing it? Is this like Pokemon Snap in the little bubble? That's what I was thinking. Be the only
Yeah, so-
viable mechanism.
It's interesting because all of the codexes are written from the perspective of like an Imperium field guide, exactly how you just put it out.
Yeah.
The Tyranid Codex often uses verbiage such as, Ordos, Xenos, Inquisitors, or Magi biologists who specialize in the Tyranids. It's also flavored a lot with phrases like, none of this makes sense because everything we've observed is X, but then everything else is Y. And then then they give you enough lore so that you understand how your army functions. So basically, like, as I'm going through the notes, as I'm writing stuff, I'm always have that in mind. They think, maybe. I'm getting rid of all of those where otherwise, half the podcast would be maybe.
Right.
They think. But yeah.
I would imagine also that it's like astral projections, like the astropaths and things like that are drawing down and writing what they're seeing in their brains, in their
Yeah.
minds.
Ah, okay.
The other thing is Inquisitor Cryptman, who will probably get talked about more from an Imperium side, but Inquisitor Cryptman has gone to a lot of the worlds that have been destroyed in the past, and when those worlds have had the right type of technology, they've dropped all of their records into like vaults super far underground that the Tyranids either don't care about or haven't been able to get to, and Cryptman has recovered a bunch of those. And Cryptman is an interesting character because at one point he decided that the best way to stop the Tyranids was essentially to create a fire break. A lot like, to stop a forest fire, you'll burn part of the undergrowth. Well, when you do that with planets that are filled with people, you exterminatus like hundreds of planets. And that's what he did. In a line across the galaxy, he exterminated, he did exterminatus without the Inquisition's permission on like hundreds of planets, and that's how he got marked as a radical and was essentially like, disbarred isn't the right word, became a rogue inquisitor.
But did it work?
It did not at all.
Okay, never mind.
It's probably why he got disbarred. They're like, oh, this isn't that bad of it. It didn't work. Disbar him. You got any other?
They're all, oh, so it worked, right? And he's all, listen about that.
Look, you got to break a couple of 100 dozen planets to make an omelet, okay? And they're like, no one has ever said that, ever. That is not a phrase.
They would have been eaten anyway.
It's true.
That's a fair argument. I'm not gonna lie.
What, like hand over your Inquisitor license, sir?
Yeah, exactly. Like, excuse me, Nick.
Your rosette handed over.
Do you have any other follow-up? Is there anything else that any other little tidbits?
Oh my gosh. I learned about the Zotes today, so we should definitely extra special talk about them because they're fantastic, and I think that's a great idea.
Yeah,
Yeah, we
Zotes are
touched
pretty
base.
cool.
Yeah, I talked about those a bit on the last one.
They're amazing.
So Zotes were at one point like an ambassador race to the Tyranids, very, very early on. They really aren't anymore, and it's a little unclear as to whether or not the Zote is a bioform that the Tyranids constructed, or whether or not the Zotes are something that the Tyranids just like...
They heard the sales pitch and they were like, yeah, planetary
in.
consumption. Let's go, boys.
I'm all about it.
The Zotes are definitely pretty cool. I definitely hope that we see more lore on them. We'll probably talk about them in episode 3 a little bit more in depth because we'll talk about the bioforms.
So I'm gonna have a purity seal on his ass.
No, it's like a soul stone looking thing.
Okay, sorry, the pictures are small.
It's on the model.
The Tyranids were like, "Oh, yes, I'd like to give you money and help you escape from jail, Mr. Prince of Persia." The Zotes were like, yes, I must take your money. We need your help.
But yeah, they definitely look like, if the Zotes are a bioform of the hive mind, they are a very old bioform of the hive mind. It actually, we talked about old ones earlier before we started recording. I wonder if the Zotes have a connection to the Slan.
I wondered the same thing when I saw this picture. I was thinking to myself, like, oh my gosh.
Well, that's the whole thing. Remember, in Blood
very
Bowl,
lizardy, yeah.
In Blood Bowl, the Zote is a star player for the Lizard. So that's how I took it.
Where is
interesting?
He? Oh, yeah, it's right here.
Zolcath the Zote.
Yeah, there's a Blood Bowl Zote.
Fucking badass. Best.
You can actually
ever.
see his face, which is pretty cool. The model's dope too.
Oh, that's amazing.
I think mine's cooler.
Yeah, you guys have a third party one, right?
Yeah, it's like a crocodile, but he looks like the Indominus Rex.
That's cool. Yeah, Zotes are definitely one of those things that, we know a little bit about them because of Blackstone Fortress. We know a little bit about them because there's the old metal kits, and they were in the 2nd edition Tyranid Codex. And we know a little bit about them because there's some new lore. But essentially, the Zotes currently do not work with the Tyranids anymore. And not a lot's known about them by the Imperium, except they're very, very fascinated with old Necron technology and specifically Blackstone fortresses. They seem to be very into old Xenotech. They've been encountered, obviously, because they're in the Blackstone Fortress game. They've been encountered. It'd be cool. We had talked about, we have a series that we're doing, a slow series that we're doing where we talk about minor factions in the 40k universe that we'd like to see expanded. And the Zotes are on there. Love to have you on for maybe part 2 or part 3, or any part you're interested in.
Oh, of like obscure Xenos factions that we need to bring more energy to.
Yeah.
I mean, I've wanted Space Slan
More
for some
models.
time. Give us the Space Slan.
Yeah,
Let them just go through the warp and put them in little helmets.
There's this guy right here. This old
Oh,
Blanche.
yeah, I've seen that. Yeah.
Yeah, because they were in 1st edition and in 2nd edition, they Slan were a part of the 40k universe. There's old. I mean, you'd be really, really lucky if you found them for anywhere close to a reasonable price. But there are old metal Slan models with guns.
With guns.
Yeah, right
I
here.
would love to just,
There's a lot of Kit Bash Lizard Men auxiliaries for Tau as well.
Oh, that's
cool.
awesome.
That's a good place for him.
That is so cute.
But it would be cool to see Space Slan. G-Dub, since we know you listen to our episodes because we are the largest podcast. I joke, but every time we say they are, we have said in past episodes, they will never bring squats back. It happened. We quoted their old 55% rule where the model had to be 55% G-Dub plastic to play on table. And the next day, the day after the episode dropped, they passed their new rule where it's like 98% of the model. So, if we talk about Space Slan enough, they'll come back.
Gotta manifest it.
Yeah, we also talked about Space Hulks a lot last season. Like we talked about it and wanting to play on Space Hulks and wanting to develop rules for Space Hulks, and now we're getting rules for playing on Space Hulks.
I also said that the Demiurge were dwarves, and they are.
Yep.
I could really use $1 million. I'm just gonna throw it out there right now.
Huge, naked, big titty women don't just fall out of the sky,
Is that in Dogma?
That's Dogma.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Dogma.
Dogma. Oh man. All right. So nothing. Okay.
And then, of course, we did have our Guess What Neckbeard episode about the Tyranids. And my impression after, that was one of our that was her second most controversial episode ever.
What was your first most controversial? The Sisters of Battle?
Sisters of Battle, yes. Don't read those comments for self-care. But the Tyranid episode, you know, it was like, are they truly evil, calculating? Are they fully aware of what they're doing? Or are they just hungry bugs? And the internet is very divided on that topic.
Yeah, well, fuck them.
So I don't think we'll touch on it until episode 3 or possibly our post wrap-up episode, but a lot like the brood mind is formed when enough gene stealers show up, the hive mind, or a version of the hive mind, shows up when there are enough Tyranids present. The hive mind isn't a thing out there somewhere doing stuff. The hive mind is what happens when enough mass gathers in a single area.
With the synapse creature that...
You don't even need a synapse creature. You just need enough biomass, Tyranid biomass, to be in an area, and a hive mind will generate. And that will make a synapse creature. A creature will be like promoted. But the idea that the hive mind isn't willfully doing this, and the hive mind isn't at least in some way aggressive, or I mean, evil
bacteria,
is a weird word to state. Yeah.
It's like bacteria. Would you call bacteria evil for wanting to eat? It's the same damn thing.
No, but Tyranids aren't necessarily like the concept that Tyranids are just trying to eat is
trying to grow.
Like, yeah, it's like a microized way of looking at it. The hive mind is definitely not good. I don't know if I would say it's evil, but I wouldn't call it good.
No.
Or mindless. And the idea that Tyranids are like feral, instinctual creatures is propagated because the majority of the Tyranids that the Imperium encounters are feral creatures. You know, Termagants, Hormagaunts, there's nothing there. Even to a certain extent, Tyranid warriors and other stuff, there's not a lot there. But creatures like the Swarmlord, or the versions of the Swarmlord that exist, they're definitely fucking evil things. They're out to destroy. You know, they're not necessarily out to murder for murder's sake. There's a purpose behind it, but they're not rat ghoul, okay?
Yeah, I don't know, man. I feel like they're just, obviously what they're doing isn't nice.
Right.
But I don't feel like they're doing this out of evil, for like gaining satisfaction out of doing something evil like chaos.
Right.
They're trying to appease to the chaos gods and trying to, you know, ensue these bad things so that way the morally bad things happen. Like Tyranids are just trying to eat and expand and survive.
They probably don't have morals, or at least not morals that matter to humans. It's like
Right.
It's like the entire concept of is Cthulhu evil? Not really. Cthulhu just doesn't give a shit about you. Like, are we evil to an ant? No. Does that stop us from murdering ants in the hundreds of millions? Absolutely not. To an ant, is that a deplorable act? Absolutely. Like, there's a, but yeah, I think my favorite theory is that the Tyranids are running from something, and that they have to eat everything in front of them to become powerful enough to turn around and face it.
That would be cool.
Yeah, that's but it's definitely it's funny that you mentioned that raised controversy, because our part 1 Tyranid episode in our own Discord server brought up a lot of conversations about essentially what is ethical and what is moral from different race perspectives.
I'm really sorry.
Fluffykins.
Miss Nugget.
Miss Nugget.
Miss Nugget has decided to join us on the podcast. Oh boy.
Does she have opinions about the Tyranids other than they need to be on the floor? Why are they on my table?
I can hear them.
She's a lot like a Tyranid, actually. You know, the vet diagnosed with her with something similar to the way that they she has what's called dietary indiscretion. So she'll just, anything is food.
Okay.
Yeah, she's a little Tyranid.
Sounds like, look at all this biomass arranged before me. And you're like, that we do not call the other animals in the house biomass.
Exactly. Yeah. Rubber bands are not biomass. My Burger
Oh,
King is
geez.
not biomass. My fake lashes. There's been a lot of interesting trips to the vet. So yeah. Yeah.
Well, how did your episode? How did your give us a taste of get wrecked neckbeard Tyranids?
Oh, guess what? Neckbeard Tyranids. Okay.
Oh, I like Can I say get wrecked?
Oh man. Okay. Yes. Get wrecked neckbeard. I like that.
As I'm sporting my little bit of I probably should shave.
Yeah, I feel that.
So, let's see. In the episode, we talked a lot about the Norn Queens,
Okay.
and we talked a lot about, well, it's a 3-minute episode. That's all you get on TikTok.
Yeah.
And people lose interest in the first 30 seconds. So the things that we tried that really got the controversy going were the Norn Queens. And then, of course, like, does the Gene Stealers make the whole Tyranid thing, like, the most evil?
I've seen those things on Twitter, those Norn Queens. Well, yeah.
Those are
Like
horrifying.
Oh, no, I'm talking about, like, the people. They're, like, calling themselves Norn Queen, Bilbo. I'm like, oh, my God.
Oh
Titties.
my God.
No, I'm just kidding.
What?
What is that, dude?
A Norn
That's a
Queen,
Kit Bash
apparently.
Nord Queen? Whoa. That's horrifying.
I want one. So we've got the spider kit and looks like a Trigon head
Mm-hmm.
and a Swarmlord body.
I was going to say, yeah,
Hive
like a
Lord
Hive
body.
Tyrant. Yeah.
Ooh. Yeah,
Wow.
the Gene Stealer cults. So Gene Stealer cults and Tyranids are very much designed on the principles of Purity Seal territory. Are very much designed on the principles of early 80s Alien, as in the movie Alien,
Mm-hmm.
like sci-fi and that whole idea. And a huge part of that idea that a lot of people don't like to see is that the concept behind the Alien movie, the actual core concept, the lesson that you're learning, because all horror movies teach a lesson, is that having your will removed, having your consent removed by somebody else that then forces a pregnancy upon you is an awful thing to happen. And in a lot of cases, it results in death, which is why I don't think his name is Dallas. Dallas is the commander. But the guy who gets infected, he essentially gets raped, and then he dies when the baby is born. And then the baby grows up to murder everything else. And that is the kernel, the story kernel, the horror movie kernel, the cosmic...
This was an alien?
Yeah, Alien. The first movie. The cosmic horror of that creature. And they directly brought that over into the Gene Stealers specifically, and in a lot of ways the Tyranids as a whole. The Tyranids, the thing that makes the Tyranids scary is the fact that they aren't necessarily evil. There isn't a way to sit down with them at a table and have an ethic or moral discussion, because they're going to eat your face on the table.
Yes.
like there's not going to be a discussion because you're just food to them.
I would say if there's an evil aspect to the Tyranids, it would probably be the Gene Stealer cult.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
And it's just more of a conniving. And
yeah.
And they're so fascinating, and it's very easy, and we saw this when we did our Gene Stealer cult series. It's very easy to side with the Gene Stealer cult when you look at how awful the Imperium is and how awful the Imperium treats its citizens. Like, I could totally see myself becoming a Gene Stealer cultist if I lived in that environment, because that environment, this is a completely shitty, and then this group is offering a better solution, even though it's not a better solution.
It's
but
not
still,
a better solution at all.
It seems better in the moment.
Yeah. The freaking Zotes, though, man, like, they seem pretty evil, too.
The Zotes are very altruistic. They're very much out for just themselves.
Yeah.
At least now. And yeah, I'm gonna dig more into that. I promise, for next episode, or our fourth episode, our roundtable on Tyranids. I'm definitely gonna dig more into Zotes and come back to that, because that's a great. All right, so we have to have a pretty big discussion before we get into this, and that is nothing is quite as strange as the warp in the Warhammer 40k universe. And in a lot of ways, it's even stranger when you look at science fiction in general.
Mhm.
While we haven't focused an entire episode yet on what the warp is, we do seem to bring it up pretty frequently as it kind of runs everything in the Warhammer 40k universe. The warp, from a mechanics or storytelling place, solves two very large issues that most science fiction settings have to address. The two things that the warp fixes from a mechanics and storytelling point is, first off, it allows faster than light travel that's needed to connect a vast interstellar distance that's often encountered as the bedrock or the foundation of any epic space opera style story. Secondly, it introduces a factor of danger to that shortcut. So you're doing two things with it. You're giving a way that the Imperium can travel faster than light, that anybody can travel faster than light, but you're also making it incredibly dangerous. So there's a risk and a reward and a payoff, which drives the story. A quick analog to the warp is the concept of hyperspace, which has arguably become one of the most widespread ideas that came out of the Star Wars universe. The concept of hyperspace has been borrowed by a lot of different things. And while that concept is still being fleshed out inside the Star Wars universe, the actual consequences of hyperspace travel result in needing a computer to either map or do complex calculations so your jump isn't screwed up. To quote Han Solo, traveling through hyperspace ain't like dust and crops, boy. Without precise calculations, we could fly right into a star or bounce too close to a supernova, and that'd be the end of your trip real quick, wouldn't it? The warp from Warhammer 40k, in contrast, is a lot more like the Hellraiser universe as seen through the lens of the science fiction work of Event Horizon, which was heavily inspired by Hellraiser. It's also tangentially inspired by 40k, but from everybody who wrote it and worked on it.
It absolutely is. I don't care what you say.
From everybody who worked on it, it's the Hellraiser with a little 40k. To us, it's a lot of 40k with a little Hellraiser. But the dangers of the warp are not only an issue to navigate if you get it wrong and come out into a supernova, but also just traveling through it in the first place is really, really fucking bad. However, the warp also allows for the fantasy element to come into 40k's science fiction universe, since by its very existence, the warp allows for the function of psychers, miracles, witches, demons, and even the existence of saints, plus a bunch more shit I haven't brought up. The warp is what helps us maintain an edge of hard science fiction while moving the grimdark setting away from the traditional space opera settings. There's no longer a bunch of optimism covered up by minor problems. There's a major mechanic in the universe that's a massive problem to the universe, but you need it in order to function. And
so in old fantasy, was there a warp type system
in the Warhammer fantasy battle?
Because like daemons and stuff, or demons. Matt Damon was in fantasy.
The warp still exists in fantasy. It actually still exists in Age of Sigmar as well.
Okay.
It's just treated differently. And at one point, the concepts were linked. They are no longer linked. Because
do they call it the warp in fantasy?
Yep, it's still called the warp in fantasy. In fact, warp stone is something that the Skaven use to power a lot of their gadgets.
That's right. Yeah, you did mention warp.
Yeah.
Oh, well, I don't know if it was warp stone. Was it the stuff that the Skaven collect in Mordheim?
Mordheim, they're going after Weird Stone, which is warp stone that came from the comet, the twin-tailed comet. It's still technically warp stone. It's just warp stone that came from the comet rather than warp stone that the Skaven find underground.
Huh. Interesting.
Yeah.
So, in fantasy, could they technically travel in the warp to another planet? They don't have Gellerfields, though, so I guess they just...
They used to be able to, Marky, and then 4th edition happened, and somebody penned a line officially in a 40k publication that said there was no link between the old world and 40k anymore.
Gotcha.
I'm sorry. There never was, guys. What are you talking about? Ignore everything we said in the last 4 editions of the game.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
It's probably one of the only hard line separations they've done. And I can kind of say, a lot of the reasons that stuff has changed is to protect intellectual property, and I can't necessarily fault a company for wanting to do that. But It is the warp and this kind of fantasy element that is in 40k, though, is why oftentimes we kind of make fun of 40k and call it a science fancy system. It's not sci-fi, it's science fancy.
As in like science fantasy type stuff?
Yeah.
Is that science
I make
fancy?
fun of, I use it to make fun of 40k all the time.
I
Where
like
are
to
you?
call it science fuckery.
Yes, warp fuckery is
warp
definitely.
fuckery. Yeah.
Yep, that's it.
How did this happen? Warp fuckery. So the reason that we talked about the warp real quick was because now we need to talk about the shadow in the warp.
My favorite.
The shadow knows.
So setting like a vast and terrible pall across countless worlds, the shadow in the warp heralds the coming of the Tyranid hive fleets. It is a nightmarish phenomenon that, whether by accident or design, has proved a crippling effective weapon against many of the galaxy's sentient races. Well, we just talked about the warp as being a layer of reality that allows for the bending of scientific principles and laws. It's also not empty. The emotions and experiences of the material universe are reflected in it, whether making it strange denizens or maybe just juicing them up. So whether or not our experiences and our souls in the material realm, not our, but our as the imperial our,
The royal we,
create the stuff that's in the warp, or whether or not there was stuff in the warp that just gets more powerful because we feed it, is a little unclear. It's both a powerful and extremely unpredictable and dangerous tool. As mentioned before, it allows for the existence of magic in the form of psychers in 40k, and it's the primary method by which several of the races and factions have managed to build an interstellar or intergalactic empire. Although it's also full of demons and must be handled with extreme caution, for any empire to survive, it must maintain a couple of different things: communication, established routes of commerce, established roads, and ways to travel or move troops across its empire. You need to be able to essentially get troops and resources from point A to point B to protect the empire, but the empire also needs to communicate things like laws or financial transactions, all that sort of stuff. By the way, all the things I just mentioned are really, really good tips to keep in mind when doing any world building, whether or not it's in a fantasy setting or a sci-fi setting. Because of all of this, the Imperium of Man, through ambition, inheritance, or sheer hubris, needs to tempt fate by using the warp constantly. Without topping into the warp's system, settlements can become cut off and isolated in an endless dark of space, becoming easier to snuff out of existence entirely.
I was thinking, how fun would it be to be a demon living in the warp? Like, you know, just shit opens up. You get to walk out of it, like, you know, a doorway, for example, and you're in the middle of like, I don't know.
And I'm the psychopath, Tom.
Just saying.
You know, I think Mark cracked it. I think he cracked it because, well,
what are we talking about?
We're all saying like, there's nothing good about being in the 40k universe, and it's like, nah, it'd be pretty sweet if you were a demon.
Right. I mean, wouldn't it?
Yeah, no, that's what I'm saying. Like, I agree. I think
it's free real estate.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, you just do whatever you want. Like, you don't need to eat. You're probably not going to get fat unless you're a nurgling. Like, it's,
and then you want it, so it doesn't matter.
And even then you like it, you know.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, if you're a demonette, I mean, there's that. So, you know, it's probably a good time if you're a demon. If you're going to be something in the 40k universe, a demon's probably not.
Basically, we just get to live out Little Nicky.
Yeah.
Can you imagine remaking Little Nicky from the Warhammer 40k perspective?
Sin is in.
Because, I mean, imagine, like, if you're, like, all right, so if you're a Tyranid, you're probably a Gaunt. You don't have your own, like, your own thoughts. You got the Norn Queen or the Hive Tyrant or the Swarm Lord thinking for you, telling you, hey, you know, go over here. And you're like, ah, bitch, fine. Like, I guess I'll go over here. And you're like, I don't really have a choice right now. So, all right, fine, yeah. I mean, and then after all that, you're either dead from the enemy or you're dead from jumping back in the acid vat so you can get turned back into mush or back into another Gaunt.
Everybody back in the pile.
I live again, or what is it? I live. Everybody back
I
in
die,
the
live.
pile.
Everybody back in the pool. But like, I mean, and then you come back as like, you know, the Swarm Lord's toe, it's probably not the best life to live as a Tyranid.
I don't think I would want to live as a Swarm Lord either, though, because like even then,
That's a lot of responsibility.
well, you're still going to get digested at the end of the day.
Yeah, but I mean, at least you matter. At least you have like
Hey.
your own thoughts.
Hey, Harry the Hormagaunt mattered. Okay, he brought change and responsibility to his corner of the battlefield, and by change of responsibility, I mean he murdered everything in front of him in a straight line.
That's a good little gaunt. It's a good
Just
little
had
gaunt.
to prep everything for the Rippers that are following behind him. That's the real key right there. You want the best life.
You want to be the Ripper?
You want to be a Ripper.
Yeah.
You think Rippers would be the best life? in
Oh,
a
yeah, you
Tyranid
just-
all you do you
hive?
You just eat
Teeth.
until you're too full, and then you crawl into a digestive pool, and then you're born again as a Ripper to do it all over again.
Yeah, it's like a spa. Like
Yeah.
all right, think about it like this: all you can eat buffet.
And then a spa,
Take a nap in a spa,
and then all you
and then
eat
all you can eat
buffet.
buffet. Yeah, it's like it's a never-ending cycle of.
Sounds like
I'm down for that.
Sounds like my weekend.
Yeah, people pay a ton of money for those like sensory deprivation tank experiences. Like
Yeah,
I
sure.
imagine it's a lot like what they're going through between.
Usually
Yeah.
right
Between
after
feeding cycles. Yeah,
Mhm.
Usually right after they went to Vegas. That's the Ripper lifestyle. You go
was
to
just about to say
Vegas
that.
and then you sensory deprivation tank.
yeah. I was just gonna say I was like living the life of a Ripper is probably just like going to Vegas. It's probably
Maybe
pretty
get-
similar.
You get some dialysis, deprivation tank, dialysis, go right back out. So rip some warp dust and then eat everything in a
Yeah,
line.
Exactly.
So the shadow in the warp.
Rip some warp dust off a warrior's ass, and you're on your way.
Oh my god.
Sorry, was that too much?
The warrior doesn't even realize it because it's not his concern. He's like, yeah, whatever.
What was that? Just Timmy the Ripper. Just that's what they call him, and then they call him a Ripper because he is a Ripper. He just rips those lines.
He just
dude.
rips
It's
those lines
yeah,
constantly.
just Timmy the Ripper, dude. Just
Gotta
getting
rip it. Gotta rip it.
Yeah.
There's multiple ways to eat a guardsman. Sometimes with your teeth, sometimes just lining them up and across the line.
I said from the very beginning, out of all the Tyranids, Rippers were my favorite.
Well, now
it's
now
all
I know
starting to
why.
make sense.
Now I see the reason why. You don't want to be a gaunt. No free will. You don't want to be a swarm lord. There's no too much responsibility.
The hours are hell.
Yeah, the
Think
hours
about
suck.
it. They're basically critters.
Yeah, they are. They are
Yeah.
literally.
And those
critters.
guys are awesome.
That's
Those
fair.
movies are awesome.
That would be a good way. Like, can you imagine? Short story, Colonel. It's just some Rippers that get loose on a planet, and all they can do is eat and procreate. That's all
Right.
these Rippers can do. There's no Tyranids anywhere nearby. There's no Gene Stealers anywhere nearby. How long does it take for the trouble with tribbles to happen with Rippers?
Not very long.
There's just like a group of Death Watch.
Mm-hmm.
A group of Death Watch shows up and they're all kill krites.
How long before the Ripper develops an asshole so that way he can just eat and crap and then eat and crap over and over
Probably.
again till the next till the next Splinter Fleet comes along and he's like, all right, I guess I'll join you.
Yep.
The whole
Well,
short
they do.
story is just about the evolution of how a Ripper gets its asshole.
Dude, it'd be a great short story. It really would. Like, think of it. It's like a little dog,
We call it the Brown Star.
It's like the Chihuahua.
Oh my god.
Oh my god.
That's why Rippers shake all the time, because they can't poop.
Yeah.
That was a Chihuahua joke. Sorry. He yelled at a Chihuahua once.
And then
he'll-
eat tamales.
That's why they shake, because they don't think they can ever pee again. All right. Poor Chihuahuas. So the shadow in the warp creates an area or a field of artificial isolation, a useful tool to the Tyranids. This psychic blanketing effect, or fog of war, surrounds and extends vast distances around a hive fleet. It cuts off mortal senses and their connection to the warp, something that even the psychic mastery of the Eldari struggle to explain. So even Eldari masters are like, we don't get why this works. Most everything has a connection to the warp. Basically, when a mortal dies, their essence or soul returns to the warp to either be born again or to go to the next place. That's a little unclear. Because the shadow and the warp cuts everybody off from it, it unsettles almost all creatures and any population. This often ends up in displays of increased aggression, paranoia, and panic. This can result in violent upheavals and civil unrest, or even doomsday activities like doomsday cults, naysayers, doomsday sayers grow up on these planets. For those with a stronger or attuned connection to the warp, it's much worse. Human psychers, orc weird boys, and the entirety of the Eldari race all suffer the shadow's effect much, much more profoundly. To some, it's numbing, others are plagued with visions of the end, and others have their minds burned out by it. Some simply can't deal with the horrors they hear and see and still be bothered to remember to breathe. So you'll suffocate to death because you're just enwrapped in your head. The fate is worse for those who attempt to employ psychic powers or access the warp actively. Nosebleeds, blindness, madness, followed by your head popping like a grape are pretty common side effects. Worlds of the Imperium cut off by the shadow and the warp are often forced to fight alone. Astropaths die violent deaths when trying to force messages through this fog, messages that futilely never even arrive. Navigators can't clearly see or even open their third eye, which means that escape and rescue craft go missing or make disastrous short jumps, while relief and reinforcement warships are plagued with the same disaster just from the other side. Eldari are acutely affected by this, being that all Eldari are psychic, and even fighting back can be a struggle in torment, just being too close to Tyranids. The blanket effect robs them of their precognition powers as well, which they could use to avoid or escape being attacked at all. They essentially get a blind spot in their future sense, which most don't even notice because it's the absence of. And unless you're looking for the absence of, you don't see it. With warp sorcery failing, even those who follow the dark gods find themselves powerless within the path of the Tyranid, howling their fury at being cut off from their many gifts. Pretty much just the Tau and the Necron have less to fear from the shadow and the warp, as neither of these races rely much on the warp at all.
So is there a reason that the Tau don't necessarily rely on the warp at all, even though they have
very,
it was said
very
that they have
weak.
a
That's
warp sensitivity?
They're very weak. Warp.
Well, they don't know anything about it other than fighting demons. They know it exists, but they haven't figured it out yet.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's more of a ignorance than anything else. Okay.
Well,
Yeah,
their connection to it's really weak.
Yep.
Their souls don't burn as brightly, essentially.
Well, that's speciest.
They developed
whatever.
They developed the Startide Nexus.
Yeah.
And that was they're we're going to travel faster than light. And there's talk about it with the ethereals actually hiding information about the Astronomicon and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But basically they created that thing, went through it and was oh man, this sucks.
So do you think the ethereals might keep the Tau ignorant to the warp or ignorant to things in general for control?
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, 100%.
That's what
Yep.
Farsight talks about it. That's why he defected.
But a bigger part of it is, one of the reasons that keeping humanity ignorant of the warp and demons didn't work is because humans were being born with stronger and stronger connections to the warp, even when the Emperor was trying to put that into practice. So the Tau they don't have that connection. They've got a couple of client races that are incredibly psychically potent, but those client races can communicate what they're feeling to them, but the Tau have they don't understand. They're okay, that's great. I don't get what you're talking about.
So do you think that maybe Farsight was the responsible one for having more of a presence in the warp because he has the knowledge of it? Or is ignorance a way to fight the warp?
The fan conspiracy that there's a chaos god that is based on the Eldar race, or the Tau race, is more along the lines of because humans believe that the Tau have a demon, the Tau have a demon, and less that the Tau think the Tau have a demon. The Tau don't think that demons exist.
So what it is that when they went through the Startide Nexus, the demon released them. It actually let them out of the warp, and that's how they were able to start the atoll. where Shadow Sun's at currently. That demon is a Tau reflection of what the humans believe.
Right. Okay. So it's not necessarily. It wasn't necessarily born because of the Tau.
It's born because of the humans. Yeah.
Gotcha.
Oh.
The Tau, the benefit, like the whole thing about it is that Farsight saw what was happening, and when he ended up fighting Chaos, he was like, "Holy shit! You've known about this all along. Like, you're not helping us. You're hiding things from us. You're keeping us from the truth and from knowledge." And so he was like, "Well, now fuck you. I don't need you." And that's why he defected. And that was why Unva was like, "Kill him. He's a traitor. Like, he doesn't know what he's talking about. Like, you don't worry. Everything's fine." It's very much that type of like thing.
Yeah, because they're already a small species in itself. So when you have a large group like the Farsight Enclave defect from that, from the group, I'm sure it only hurts them, right?
Well, and the conception
It hurts their control.
Right.
Yeah. And in the conception of evolution, if the Tau are a reflection of young humanity, if the Eldar are a reflection of older humanity and the Tau are a reflection of younger humanity, the Tau may just be in the status of their evolution that they haven't developed enough of a connection to the warp. However, the Tau might also be like the Necrontyr, where they'll never have a connection to the warp because their technology will be mastered in the material realm rather than mastered in the immaterial realm.
Right, so more mastered versus science versus
Yeah,
faith.
it's getting there because Farsight's becoming sensitive.
Well, that's because Farsight wanders around with a demon strapped to his waist.
Correct. Well, that and Ovessa has been like fucking with it. Like Ovessa's like fucking a lot with the warp, because he's like, "What the hell is this?"
Let's poke it with a stick.
Yeah, so there's a lot of talk that if there were Chaos Tau, it would have started in the Farsight Enclave, or from Shadow Sun's Atoll group, because they turned on everything that isn't Tau because it was corrupted by Chaos. Right. And so they've seen it. They've seen it manifest like in person. So if there's anything, like something knows they're there. You know what I mean? So.
And we'll dive a lot deeper into all this stuff when we cover the Tau and then the Farsight Enclave.
Sorry, I was going off on a tangent.
No, it's cool.
I haven't gotten to talk about Tau in a long time, so
yeah, it's been a bit. However, the Tyranids still utilize something approaching psychic warfare. Their expressions of power often mimic those races that they have faced. The deeper into the galaxy the Hive fleets get, more biomass they seem to generate that can access these warp-like powers. Whether this is by some careful manipulation and storage of the warp beforehand, the Hive mind's ability to exist outside of the Shadow's influence, while still channeling through some of its bioforms, or some other mimicry that allows their gestalt will to just manifest these powers, no one knows. Nor does it matter much to the people who are stuck in the front lines fighting embittered battles on isolated worlds. But what it does mean is that Tyranids can project shimmering force fields, shred the sanity of a target with a psychic scream, or even goad their own ranks into massive killing frenzies with psychic powers.
That's crazy. So they're warp fuckering it away in a sense where it's either them being somewhat able to control the warp, or they stored the warp energy of whatever they consumed and they used that. That's what they're talking about, essentially.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so essentially, since you'd think that since the shadow of the warp blankets everything, it should be affecting the Tyranids too, but the Tyranids aren't affected by the shadow and the warp.
Yeah. That was one of those things that I always was curious about, because you see Tyranids doing psychic abilities, they're manifesting psychic powers, yet they have almost like a, what do you call it, a blank? It's not a blank. What the hell are they called?
Blanks.
Is it a blank? Okay.
Yeah.
They have like almost a blank's ability to block out everybody else's psychic power.
Yeah,
or their influence.
It's a bit, the shadow and the warp, it doesn't necessarily nullify the warp. It just fills the warp with essentially like the screaming chittering of insects.
Okay,
just
so it's
like
almost
you were
more
saying.
It's almost more like a scrambler versus a.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
You had mentioned it last time, where you imagine that when a psyker tries to glimpse into the warp, they're seeing that sequence from Starship Troopers where all the bugs are rushing and just murdering everybody.
Right.
And it's kind of that idea. It's that idea that when you dip into the warp, you just see, you see the all-empowering thing that it's forcing.
Okay.
That the Hive fleets are forcing out.
Very much like a scrambler, more so than a blank.
Right. But to the Imperium, it comes across as a blind spot, a shadow. Its function is that it's not there. But I think the reason that they call it shadow rather than like blank is because it's supposed to be like a scramble. It hides it.
Right.
So this inexplicable phenomenon, the longer the scholars of the galaxy study the Tyranids, the more confused they have become about the race's interactions with the warp. While they appear inert and unable to access the warp, the Ordo Xenos has found cases of a Hive fleet being swallowed by a warp rent and then emerging into another part of the galaxy almost unscathed. While this would see most other races either horribly mutated or bloody and near death, these Hive fleets emerged as if nothing happened, ready to snack on whatever system they find themselves in. Gene stealers are the most prolific and cunning of the Hive fleet's vanguards, stowing away on Imperial ships or infesting space hulks to spread far and wide. Since the fall of the Gossamer Quintus, it has become apparent to the Ordo Xenos and the Death Watch that the Gene Stealers are able to infiltrate and infect a world's embedded population, spreading while sowing deceit, civil unrest, and eventually armed rebellion on the worlds that the Tyranids have targeted. Bafflingly, the Gene Stealer cults also seem to be able to broadcast a massive psychic signal, a signal which acts as a beacon to nearby Hive fleets, while also remaining completely misunderstood by any of the most talented Magi who have attempted to unravel their ability to do this. This fusion of human and Tyranid psychic and synaptic potential paves the way for the horrors of the Gene Stealer cults. So we covered the Gene Stealer cults first, and now we're doing the Tyranids, and we did that because of the Gene Stealer's connection to normal humans, and we had just finished our Astra Militarum series. We didn't mean to do them out of order, and just like when we were in the Gene Stealer episode, it seemed like the Gene Stealers should be first and the Tyranids should be second. Now that we're talking about the Tyranids, the book is written where the Tyranids should have been the first faction we talk about, and the Gene Stealers should have been second. We didn't do it to you guys on purpose. But there is a little bit of crossover, so there you go.
Get a little bit of everything.
Yeah.
You even got some Tau in the Tyranid episode. That's for all you Tau players. Probably little blueberries. There you go.
Yeah, they got some dope robots for fighting Tyranids.
And we've had all sorts of arguments about Eldar. None of them were recorded, but we had all sorts of fights about the Eldar.
And as the Necron player, I just love the fact that like Tyranids, they just leave the Necrons alone. Like there's nothing to eat there. Like even the Nids like avoid the Tomb Worlds, and I just think that's so fucking metal.
We'll talk about it actually here towards the end of the episode, but there's actually an argument that I can make as to why that shouldn't be happening, where it doesn't make sense. So I wonder if something else is happening, but we'll get there when we get there. So how do you guys want me to say it? I always think Behemoth because it's moth, and you guys seem to want me to say myth.
Yeah, Behemoth,
but it's Moth. Behemoth, the first Teneric War. Behemoth was the first Hive fleet recognized by the Imperium of Man. After annihilating the outpost on Tyran Primus, it thundered on through settled space, carving a direct line towards the Ultramarines' stellar empire of Ultramar. Driven on by a primal hunger it seemed unable to fully control, the Hive fleet appeared as unstoppable as it was beastily unsubtle. Warning only reached Ultramar before the Tyranids descended on the realm through the efforts of Inquisitor Kryptman, who had been shadowing the Hive fleet Behemoth. In response, the Ultramarines gathered almost their entire chapter's strength, further marshalling the defensive regiments of Ultramar and several entire fleets. Still, it proved barely enough to halt Behemoth's onslaught. World after world fell to the Tyranids, and with each planet stripped of biomass, the Tyranids' ranks simply just redoubled. Their path moved ever closer to the Ultramarines' homeworld of Macraig. The garden world of Peridium was stripped bare, the caverns of Calith became nothing more than gore-choked carnal houses, It was McCraig itself that would decide the First Teneric War's fate. Under Chapter Master Marius Calgar, the Ultramarines did what they could to hold off wave after wave of attack, attempting to slow and bleed away as much of the Tyranid strength as they could. Calgar himself was almost mortally wounded by the monstrous bioform known as the Swarm Lord during the Battle of Cold Steel Ridge, and it seemed as if the Ultramarines would fail and Behemoth would consume all that lay before it. However, a valiant ambush by the Ultramarines' own incredibly badly damaged Void Fleet and the newly arrived battle fleet Tempestus was able to break the Hive Fleet above the ringed world of Circe. On McCraig, the heavily fortified polar fortresses of the world were able to turn the tide in the Ultramarines' favor, but the cost was terrible and the entirety of First Company was completely slain. This was a wound that would take years for the Ultramarines to recover from. Splinters of Hive Fleet Behemoth scattered from McCraig and have continued to assault the realm of Ultramar and the Imperium as a whole. Behemoth wars with brutish intensity, favoring lumbering Carnifexes, Tyrannifexes, Exocrines, and other massive, almost fortress-like bioforms to make the bulk of its force, smaller bioforms rushing alongside, all in an effort to smash aside and overwhelm any resistance with pure brute force. There is none of the subtlety of the other Hive fleets and Behemoth's actions.
So, what makes the Tyrannic War more special / well-known than any other Space Marine chapter fighting the Tyranids? Because, like, Ultramarines have, like, their own, or they used to have their own special unit of Tyrannic War veterans, and
Right.
The Tyrannic War was, like, the most well-known war against the Tyranids and how it fucked up the Ultramarines. So, like, what makes that so much more special to where they actually, like, had their own unit, they were super bad at, like, what made it more special than any other fight with the Tyranids in Space Marines?
So in 4th edition, in order to push the newly unveiled new Tyranid sculpts, the ones that are currently for sale, there was a battle box called the Battle of McCraig. That's the answer to you.
But wasn't it also like the first instance,
Yes.
of a Tyranid and Space Marine conflict?
Yes, it was the first, from a lore perspective, it was the first time that
it was
the
like
Tyranids were stopped, essentially.
From the like fall of that AdMech outpost on Tyran all the way to McCraig. Yeah, it was kind of like the first documented one too.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So that's what made it more special, is the fact that they lost the Tyran Prime and it was close to, like you just said, it was close to Ultramar, so it was a big Tyrannic War. So,
and the reason they call it,
that's why they're called Tyranids.
Yeah.
Because of Tyran Prime.
But the first Tyrannic War is against Hive Fleet Behemoth. The second Tyrannic War is against Hive Fleet Kraken.
I always thought that they were called Tyranids because they're terrible.
Well, and G-Dub wants us to pronounce it like Tyran or Tyran.
Tyranids, yeah.
Tyranids,
Yeah, they want it-
yeah.
Yeah, not Tyranids, but everybody called them Tyranids for it's just like catachans. I know they want us to say catations, but they're wrong, so I'm not going to.
Catations?
Yeah,
That's how you're supposed to say catachan.
Oh.
Yeah, I know, right?
Just like not as badass. So.
No, thank you.
Yeah. What was the big one
Bring
with the
in
Blood
the
Angels?
crustaceans.
The big oily men that don't wear shirts. That doesn't sound right.
Yes, the crustaceans.
Wow. Oh, the poor Custode listeners right now who are just enraged at the podcast.
So, there was another big war. Essentially, the Blood Angels got their shit pushed in by the Tyranids as well. Was it just not as important because it happened later on down the line?
We'll cover, I think, the two major ones that have happened so far, which is the first Tyrannic War, which is Bahamut, which is what we're talking about now, the Battle of McCraig. I think the battle that happens on Ball happens during the second Tyrannic War, which is against Hive Fleet Kraken. I'm not 100% sure. The fall of Baal might be later.
Okay, yeah. I'm
But
pretty
yeah.
sure it is because they had Primaris at this point. So it was
Yeah, it could be. It's probably one of the newer conflicts. And essentially, the Battle of McCraig and this the event that we're talking about now was like the Imperium's first like, oh, shit's fucked up moment. This was their first like, oh, this is a problem. You know, when Tyrant Primus fell, they're like, okay, we lost an outpost. When a bunch of shit steamrolls into Ultramar, which is a center of power large enough to actually rival the Imperium itself, especially if it wanted to. And, you know, the Ultramarines follow the Codex Astartes by making, you know, it says we're only allowed to have 1,000 members in a chapter. So if we have 1,000 chapters, then we have 10,000 or 100,000 Space Marines. Yay. Like they're towing that line. And for them to get beaten this badly, especially being the only chapter that didn't suffer during the Horus Heresy, was massive. It was huge. In a way that the fall of Baal is as well. It's just not as impactful as like the Ultramarines getting almost wiped out. Also, a Space Marine chapter almost losing its homeworld is a massive thing.
Yeah, 100%.
So speaking of almost losing your homeworld, the Battle of McCraig. The assault on the Ultramarines' homeworld showed the Hive Fleet's brutish tactics like no other. The planet was supported by orbital defense platforms, its own mighty fleet of warships, massive polar fortresses, and the amassed regiments of Ultramar and entire companies of Ultramarines, is showing a force that would make most others turn away at simply seeing it. However, Hive Fleet Behemoth charged in headlong and unflinching. So ferocious were the opening moments of the fleet battle that the Hive Fleet was able to send Tyranocytes onto the planet even as the void-based assets reeled in desperation, trying to find any defensive footing. The ground forces, believing they were supported in S.H.I.E.L.D., were caught unaware, even as the battle in orbit waged on. The sheer chaos of the opening battle and the presence of the Swarm Lord forced Marius Calgar to take to the field in person, his attention no longer focused on the fleet battle overhead. By the ninth wave of orbital attacks launched by Hive Fleet Behemoth, the orbital defenses were nothing but bloody ruins. Had Calgar not survived his grievous wounds to return to the fleet in time, and had the battle fleet Tempestus not arrived at the crucial moment, McCraig might have become just another airless biomass stripped statistic in Imperium records. Although they held out and helped to turn the ground war, by the end of the battle, even those polar fortresses I mentioned had cracked like eggs and lay in scattered ruin.
So, plot armor.
Yes.
And
Malleus Calgar, he's so wounded he'll never cross he crossed the Rubicon, boys. he's now part of Death Watch. He's back, boys.
That was what's his name? That was Chaplain Cassius.
Yeah, I know.
But yeah, Cassius got fucked. We should probably talk about him. He got fucked up in the Tyrannic Wars.
Yeah,
he's one ugly dude. When I saw his model, I was like, ugh.
I'm pretty sure.
Put your helmet on, warped. Bro. Jesus, my God.
You just imagine he walks on the field and there's some guardsman that's like, oh my God. Oh. Everybody's just horrified because like you're supposed to be in awe of Space Marines, and this one guardsman's like, I'm sorry, your face is hideous. Your face is like an ugly avocado fucked another ugly avocado.
A topographical map of Utah.
Just all the lines from Deadpool.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Like, they're like sitting there watching this like parade of Space Marines come in, and everybody's like, whoa. Whoa. And then there's that one guy who's like, oh, man, that's fucking gross.
Hey, bro, don't you have a helmet for a reason?
Within earshot. It's just, dude, he's just like, he can't even cry because his tear ducts are fucking melted by the acid from the Tyranids. It's just
that's an ugly bitch.
That's.
And then somebody in Terran High Command is like, make that man an admiral. Like, He talked back to a space marine as a private. Make that man an admiral. Right, fast track him up.
No, he's an ugly dude. Can you pull a picture up of him? I just want to show you guys how ugly this dude is. Maybe it was just the picture that I looked at.
Which
it just wasn't. It wasn't
Valdar? No, it's not Valdar.
Cassius.
Thank you,
Chaplain Cassius. But I was just like, ugh. He's like missing his lips. Like he's just teeth. He's got half a face. It wasn't great. Maybe it was a model. I don't know. I think it might have been the model.
Yeah, where like half of his skull is exposed, and yeah.
I was like, ugh, dude looks like fucking Igor.
There's a good picture of art of him. I mean, this one's pretty good.
Excuse me, sir, but your skull is showing.
It's like, dude. Yeah, I don't know. It might have just been the model.
Oh, yeah. No, he looks like, his face looks like the side of a building in Fallujah, that's for sure.
Yeah. It just looks like a Hormigaunt just went to town on his face. Like, it was just like,
Yeah, he's got mostly a skull. He looks like Two-Face.
You're like, wow, that guy has a really cool helmet. That's his face. What?
That's just his face.
That guy's a really cool chaplain helmet. You're just like, oh, dude, don't they have like healing vats for that kind of thing?
You would think that,
right? Don't we have the technology to fix that?
Well, there's like Sergeant Steele or whatever from the Catachans, who's got like half his face is essentially he has like half a Necron face. Is it Strachan? Mm-hmm. Yeah, it is Strachan. Iron Hand. Yeah, Strachan.
Yeah. It might not be. That might just be his torso and arm.
No, I think it's Strachan. I think Strachan has half a mechanical face too. I was thinking it was the Sergeant.
Oh,
I think Sergeant
Iron Harker.
No, there's an older one. It's something Iron Hand. I can't remember. Maybe it is Strachan. Was Strachan Iron Hand? Was that his nickname?
Yeah, it's like it's something like that.
I have the model. It's back there.
The only sergeant I can think of that from the Space Marines is the guy, the Ultramarine Sergeant. His name escapes me. He's the tank commander. No, but nobody cares about Ultramarines here. Sorry, Chuck.
Ultramarine.
Yeah, it's Ultramarine Sergeant Tank. He's not he's a tank commander. That's a sergeant.
Yeah, this guy.
Iron Hand Strachan. That's what it is.
Yeah, it's Iron Hand. It is Strachan. Yeah. Okay.
Does he have half a face? I can't tell from here.
No, he doesn't. I think in the old artwork he had half a face, but
it's camo.
Yeah, he's got that like one Terminator eye.
Yeah, look at those abs, dude. You can cook eggs on those abs.
All right. Ultramarine
Sergeant Tank Commander. What the fuck is his name? I used to use him. He had this funny model where he was like, he's out of the tank and he's like pointing. He's just yelling.
Right there. Oh man, look at that face. That's a face that
only a mother could love.
That did not launch 1,000 battleships.
Yeah. I would say that about Cassius, but dude, nah. His mom is probably like, nah, bro. Sorry.
Nah, bro.
You need to get that shit looked at.
We are ripping on the Ultramarines today.
It's mainly just Cassius, man. Because I have Cassius in the Death Watch when he did serve, before Primaris were around and whatnot. Chaplain Cassius.
Has he Rubicon too?
No.
He will. Give it a couple months.
All right. Oh, dude, I don't know if they can. They're like, sorry, dude, your face is too fucked up. It's just not. It's not happening.
Belisarius Call is like, hold on a second.
Oh, nothing can help you, son.
But when Calgar makes a retching noise, it doesn't sound like that. It sounds like a 56K modem.
Yeah, it's just a dial-up noise, and he's like, "I'm sorry, I was vomiting." He walks in there, and Calgar looks at him. He's like, "I can do nothing for you, son."
Now remove yourself from eyesight.
All right, so invasion swarms.
A Tyranid attack is a harrowing spectacle to behold. The skies darken with rolling toxic clouds and the descending shapes of hundreds of thousands of tyrannocytes containing broods upon broods of Tyranids. Vast swarms of ravenous monsters flow across the land, slaughtering all in their path. Yet amidst all the horror and chaos, there is an insidious pattern to be observed.
So hive fleets have different methods and instinctive tactics, but consume a world in roughly the same way. Attack waves generally increase in diversity and number, with larger bioforms coming later, and mostly only when they're needed. In the same way, their void tactics shift as the planet below becomes closer to completely falling. The nightmare begins with probing attacks designed to undermine the defenders. Vanguard organisms like gene stealers and lictors act to rise up or sabotage the planet. In some cases, the assets have been dormant for months, if not years. They also act to spread terror through the population, magnifying the horror of the shadow and the warp. They target communications and trade routes, destabilizing as much of the planet's economy and communication systems as they can. Even while these vanguards attack, tyrannocytes begin to rain down from the sky. While many are shot down by the planet's defenses, there are simply too many to deal with, and those that do land disgorge swarms of hormigons and termagants, led by synapsis creatures like Tyranid warriors, Trevagons, thank you, and hive tyrants. Gargoyles also choke the skies during these first waves, and while it might overwhelm the defenders in many cases, allowing the attackers to rip them to bloody ribbons. However, the true purpose of this wave is to probe and test. The hive mind is working to deplete the defenders' ammunition, even as it seeks out the strongest defensive positions they've put up. Once it has identified these threats and forced the defenders to draw a line of battle, the hive mind reacts accordingly. If the defenders have moved underground, it will send Raveners, Trigons, and Molochs. Lots of tanks and heavy defensives. Time for living bioform tanks in response, such as Carnifexes, Exocrines, and Tyrannifexes. Air defense is proving to be an issue. The hive mind responds with Harpies, Hive Crones, and Herodins to rip the foes from the sky. A foe proves to be able to use psychic powers still, or something similar. Neuropaths and Maleceptors Neuranthropes and Maleceptors end up on the battlefield. Biological warfare solution is sought. Venomthropes and Toxicrines are released. Either with attrition or by overwhelming force, one by one, the defenses of a world are pulled apart. Even when a titanic war machine like the Orcs Gargants or the Gon machines of the Adaptus Titanicus are deployed, the hive mind simply responds with its own titans in the Hierophants and Hierodules. Eventually, the war becomes a cruel game of cat and mouse, with the hive mind's forces seeking out and destroying those who hide, flee, and keep up with those last pockets of resistance.
Dude, I feel like it would be hilarious to do like a comic strip of like a group of rippers, and they just have like the different personality. You guys ever seen Who Framed Roger Rabbit? And
yes,
like the 6-shooter bullets.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like those rippers would have like those 6 personalities, and they're just dropping from the sky, and they're just like, all right, boys, let's go eat. And it's just like, I feel like that would be an amazing comic strip that you could just do of just like rippers and like their missions that they go on day by day, and then just chilling in the acid vats by the end of it.
So back in the day, I played World of Warcraft, and we had this entire idea for a comic strip that was Surfer Boy Murlocs just hanging out at the shore.
Yes, that's fantastic.
And now I kind of want Surfer Boy Rippers. They're just
Right?
like, whoa, bro, did you know that like 3 streets over there's the most wicked burrito? His name is Guardsman First Private Larson. Dude, man, it's just like totally edible all day. And then the next Ripper is just like token. Like, whoa, bro.
Guac isn't even like extra on the Guardsman. I have a coupon, bruh.
like looks up and is like, hey man, do you think the Hive Tyrant can see my eyes are red?
Right, and they're like smoking the right kind of like indica, and like, what if everything that we ate was just like all of time and space coming at us? You guys ever think we have something bigger? Like that we're part of something larger?
Do you
The
guys
Hive
ever
Fleet?
feel that we're in like a constant repetition of the same motions?
Just like these
Like
poor
we've
Rippers.
just been here again and again and again?
Right? Like, it's just part of a cycle. Like, there's no way to break that. And we're just gonna do this forever. That's kind of sick, man.
That's deep. That's deep, bro.
Man, stoner rippers are my new favorite piece of like headcanon ever.
I'm doing it. I'm kit fashing like little like bioweapon
That'd be
bongs.
so great, dude.
They're just like sitting in the vat like a hot tub, like smoking a cigarette.
At one point, one of them looks directly at the screen and goes, "It's a hot tub time machine."
Dude, that's the warp. Like,
Right?
We just remake Hot Tub Time Machine, but all rippers.
Oh, dude.
All right.
I used to think like Snotlings was the way to go for like comic strips and stuff, or like doing like weird like
stoner
like,
rippers, man.
Yeah, rippers. It just makes it so much better. I don't know why. It's not as funny with Snotlings. Snotlings are already dumb. Rippers are like a serious,
Well, I think of like A Bug's Life with the like roly polies.
Oh my god! Right?
That's what I think of. Like if we just filmed A Bug's Life, but it was Tyranids.
And then there's just like a big,
dude,
like Moloch or whatever that's on top of a mushroom, always smoking from a giant bong, like the caterpillar in Alice.
Yes, that's perfect.
All right, Emmy, can you read our Vox log transmission?
All right. Do we want an accent?
We want an accent.
All right.
Make us feel as if you are from the beleaguered world. Or do something really funny. One or the other.
All right, here we go. God Emperor, help me. This will surely be my last recording. I must be quick, for even now I hear them clawing at the doors. We had might of an entire Gospoda regiment to protect us. We had high Farracrete ramparts, servitor gun turrets, thrown. We even had Brother Sergeant Eskar and his space marines. We thought it was enough. It should have been enough. The walls went first. When the Xenos attacks waves broke against them, they brought up some manner of living artillery. The fire those monsters rained down didn't just kill the wall guards, but it ate away the walls themselves, swift as acid spilled on flesh. The servitor guns might have held them even then, but they were torn to pieces by I don't know what, something we could barely see. Major Wren's Gospoda did their best to hold back the swarm, even managed it for a while with the Space Marines' help, but the next Tyranid waves brought weapons with them that doused Gospoda in flesh-eating worms and incendiary chemicals. As for the Emperor's angels, thrown they were magnificent, but the beats coming at them got bigger and bigger until it was though every wave we defeated taught the Xenos how to best kill us, and by the God Emperor they learnt their lesson well. There is no way out now. The world is just being eaten, and we shall be eaten with it. I just wish.
Vox log interrupted. Terminates. By the way, Marky, that's the Deckard Cain voice.
Hey. I never claimed to be good at voices, all right? I'm not good at a lot of things in this world, all right?
And voices
I can't help it. Voices is one of them. It's just a long list of things that I'm not too great at.
So by the time the defenders are trying to cut and run, the battle is more than over and not in their favor. Another wave has begun to change the very planet itself. During all of the open warfare, an unseen war has been waged at its side at a microscopic scale. As the first Tyranids fell to deliver thousands of swarming bioforms to the planet, microscopic spores have been released by the Hive Fleet into the very atmosphere. These allow the Tyranids to begin to convert the very atmosphere itself. Spore chimneys of flesh and chitin thrust from the planet's surface, and alongside sporocytes that fell from the orbit, they pump dense toxic clouds that begin to digest the entire biosphere. Bubbling digestive pools, open, grotesque guts the size of lakes form. Into these, the Tyranids begin to deposit the dead and all other form of biomatter. Pulsating synapse nodes sprout and cluster like colossal fungi, strengthening the shadow in the warp and increasing the hive mind's influence. Capillary towers grow and stretch towards the sky, while tendrils of clawed tentacles erupt from buildings, from around the bases of buildings and fortifications to pull them down into the ground. During every moment of the invasion, Ripper swarms have amassed and rampaged across the battlefield, eating anything they come across, be it weak, wounded, or dying.
Yeah, get them.
Now numbering in the uncountable trillions, Rippers gorge until they can't eat anymore and then throw themselves into the digestive pools, rending down into so much biomass to be sucked up by the hive ships above. At the same time, Horospexes, giant walking tank stomachs, wander the planet, eating all they can, before vomiting the contents of their meals back into the digestive pools, before going back for seconds, or maybe it was 19ths. When the last flicker of resistance dies, the hive ships above begin to feed in earnest, clustering in low orbit around the capillary towers, feeding like leeches. Fortifications are pulled down and mountains are strip-mined for any useful materials and minerals. The oceans are drained and all life, even on the bacterial level, is consumed. Eventually, even the atmosphere itself is converted and consumed, the hive fleets leaving nothing but a barren waste of bedrock in their wake. So, my argument for Necrons, and they might be doing something else, is that there are several cases where they do talk about because the different bioforms actually do sometimes have like metal and stuff in them, because the Tyranids also eat valuable minerals and metals. So it's either something about necrodermis, or that maybe the like pylons, like the Necron pylons, keep them away. I feel there's
the unobtainium.
Yeah, I think there's some like future. I'm hoping there's some future thing there.
It's because it's cancer metal. They don't want to eat it.
My
That
theory,
could be radiation
my
metal.
hypothesis is that there's like a certain biosignature, like it has to be a certain like biosignature over a
Wavelength or
certain
whatever.
threshold for the hive fleets to go. And I think even though there would be some things that they'd find on the Tomb Worlds, I don't think it's like a threshold enough to draw them into the galaxy.
Probably not.
Like a
However-
P&L statement, it'd be like,
Yeah.
this would be too much in like hive fleet gas to make it over here.
It's gonna cost us so much biomass to eat the Necrons. It's
Gotta
not
stay
worth
in the
it.
black.
Exactly. Got to stay in the black. Stonks.
That high fleet gas. I love that.
But it is interesting because last episode Chuckerfly brought up the idea of orcs or some other race basically plundering in the wake of the Tyranids.
Ooh,
And
yeah.
this seems to confirm that would probably be unlikely, since the Nids are also breaking down anything useful. Now, whether or not that's raw material or raw minerals, or whether or not they can actually break down like weapons and armor, isn't really described. So but it's interesting. It's interesting to see that they eat the buildings too, essentially. And maybe, like you said, they're already there, so they're going to strip mine and eat the stuff. Maybe that's part of it. Or maybe it's literally like, well, rockcrete and ferrocrete and plasticrete are really useful. We're going to eat those things. But like a finished fusion rifle, too complicated. They're not enough gain. We're going to leave it, or whatever. Or maybe it's more random than that. Maybe they eat it. Like maybe if the guardsman that's dragged to the pool has all his weapons on it, all those weapons are broken down. But if they drop their weapon, they're not going to drag just the weapon over. Yeah, it's interesting. I'd like to puzzle out more of that. I don't think we ever will find out though.
For some reason, those acid pits just remind me. You guys ever see Dante's Peak?
Yes.
Hell yeah.
When the grandma goes and like gets off the boat to like push them. That's what the acid pits remind me of.
All the fish and the sulfur.
Yeah.
That fucking movie. I'm not leaving. Oh my god, I'm melting.
It makes me think of God. We talked about it last episode. The game StarCraft. It makes me think of StarCraft.
Yeah.
You know the like spawning pools.
Mm-hmm.
The Tyranid spawning pools and stuff. That's what it makes me think of. There's some great pictures of what they look like. But yeah, I mean it's digestive goo. And the Tyranids willingly start to throw themselves into it. Like, because again, they're not, as we talked about kind of up front, they're not really operating on an individualistic route. There's no necessarily individual malice or individual like intention. They're just fulfilling their orders, and their orders are
Swan
get
dive.
yeeted. Living arsenal. Who wants to read this little quote? Volunteers. There's one
Tyranid
more.
Weaponry. I got it. It's short, so it'll be sweet. Tyranid weaponry and war gear is entirely organic. Some examples, such as heavy carapace and chitinous armor, chameleonic flesh, or spore-spewing gas bladders, are integral to the warrior organism that employ them on the hunt. The rest appear to be grown in the churning innards of the hive ships and symbiotically grafted onto the bioforms that will wield them. That was a tongue twister.
Yeah, there's G-Dub's good at that.
Chameleonic. I've never fucking heard that word, you bastards.
It's a great word, though. Like, that's a fantastic word.
It is a great word, but, like, I didn't know what the word was until I was, like, halfway through it. I was like, chameleonic. Wow.
And then you're like, oh, that's what it means.
Jesus.
It's hard to tell where a Tyranid's body ends and their weaponry begins. While most sport fangs, claws, or talons, many more have armaments melded directly into their forms. Where the warrior ends and the weapon starts is a very difficult line to draw, as pulsating tubes, chitinous growths, and membranes link everything together. But the visible and obvious aren't the only weapons a Tyranid possesses. Toxin sacs, fleshy barbs, and other even weirder or more gruesome bioweapons lay hidden at their ready disposal. Parrying a heavy blade may disguise a striking stinger or impaling tail. Severing the weapon on one side of the Tyranid may give way to the attacking with whip-like tendrils or firing barbed spikes that come directly from their chest. In truth, the difference between a Tyranid and its symbiotic weapons is a distinction that only exists in the minds of their prey species. Every Tyranid in its complete form is a living weapon, and the loss of a limb or many is only a temporary and fleeting setback. Not only that, but the sheer rapid adaptation of their organic technology is more than a match for most other races in the Milky Way. A fact that has seen more than one race drawn into a rapid and feverish arms race against an encroaching hive fleet. The Tau are one of those races that's been drawn into this. All right, so let's talk about some of their weapons. First off is the Devourer. This is a projectile weapon whose barrel analog is a long cone of slowly decomposing meat, which is completely infested with worms. A bioelectrical signal sends those worms showering out of the weapon, where they burrow into the nervous system and brain of their victims. Those not killed outright are often driven mad. The largest of these weapons fire brain leech worms, larger and more unpleasant adaptations of the smaller worms. Also, the brain leech worm is the theoretical parent to the brain leach on Catachan. Cousins.
I was gonna say the cousin. Close cousins. Second.
Kissing cousins. That's a Catachan joke. It's fine.
Yeah, definitely unpleasant. Reminds me of...
Oh, it gets worse.
Oh, goody.
It gets worse. It reminds you of, sorry.
I lost it. So the long cone slowly decomposing meat. Is it that weird looking, what the hell? Like, it looks like a little hive cone?
Yes. It's the pretty standard termagant weapon.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, devil gaunts, I think is what they call them, right? Devourer gaunts? Or is that different? Might be different.
Hormagaunt?
They're the DACA ones. The Devourers are the DACA ones, right?
Yes, the Devourers are the guns. I always fuck this up. Hormagaunts have guns, termagants have blades, or is it the other way around?
Termagants have guns.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So termagants carry Devourers.
Mm-hmm.
And then, like, certain Hive Tyrants, there's a Hive Tyrant build that has double Devourers.
Yeah, the one that doesn't come in the kit. You have to, like, buy the Forge World arms.
Yep. But it's pretty disgusting that it's a rotting cone of meat.
That shoots worms at you. Yeah, that sounds delicious.
Super gross.
Yeah.
So the fresh borer.
Thanks for that.
You're welcome. The flesh borer. This is an organic weapon that houses flesh borer beetles. When fired, it stimulates these beetles to launch forward on flea-like legs. Frenzied, the beetles chew their way through their victim in the last few seconds of their short lives. Flesh borers can fire a variety of beetle adaptations. Beetles better suited to chewing through armor, armor-piercing beetles, or beetles called torch bugs that burst into biochemical incendiaries on impact. I think it's great. They're actually called torch bugs.
Yeah. Horny beetle gun. Got it.
Horny beetle gun. Yep. So spine fists. Normally seen in pairs, spine fists are connected to the host's airways via leathery tubes. With a sharp spasm, the warrior wielding such weapons can shoot pressurized air into the weapon, which launches a hail of chitinous spikes at their target. If the target isn't pulped with the kinetic impact, the spikes are covered with neurotoxins.
Sure.
It's like sock'em boppers, but they have little like darts on it. All right.
Yeah.
I'll allow it.
They're a super close range weapon. I think they might. Yeah, they do not have a long range.
No, they're like 3 or 4 inches.
Yeah.
They're on termaguns.
Oh, really?
Yep.
Oh.
You can take them on warriors too. A lot of the
never
weapons
seen
can
them.
be taken on multiple things. They're not. Spine fists have not been good since like 6th.
I'm assuming they're not a pistol weapon. That would probably make them viable.
They almost look kind of like
a
you know
fishtail?
those claws you use for cutting up like pork.
Yes. Yeah, they look like the shredded pork. Yeah,
Yeah.
good analogy.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, they do kind of fill the pistol role. They're just not very good at filling the pistol. Well, they haven't been recently. That all of that's subject to change.
Yeah.
So predatory projectiles. The hive mind has an organic projectile for most uses. Blunt force trauma, impalement, bioelectric shock, acidic corrosion, hemorrhagic detonation, or neurotoxin are all at a Hive Fleet warrior's disposal. Some warrior organisms can even produce their own form of bioplasma, which is effective in reducing armored warriors to glowing ash. So no matter the gun, no matter the creature, there's a weapon that can be fit into it. I wouldn't say these are a close personal favorite, but these are definitely a favorite flavor-wise. Flesh hooks. Nestled in the thoraxes of certain warrior organisms, there are chitinous barbed hooks that are launched with a violent muscle spasm. Not only do they inflict massive wounds as they punch through a victim, but they are also at the ends of sinewy cords that can be reeled back in, dragging the victim back in for a nice big old hug.
Yeah, it's the stuff of nightmares. I don't know.
Oh my god. Yeah,
Insult
like
to injury.
okay, here we go. This is like, oh, they're just hungry, right? Like, I think this almost comes into like, Darwin's theory of evolution versus intelligent design. Like, okay, did this just happen? Did all this just develop?
It's a tactic. It's for morale, so it's an easier fight.
Oh, sure. Like, it's horrifying, though. Like, there's clearly some kind of brain that's happening. Like, you can't just say it's like a mindless force of nature. This is sadistic and cruel
the
and
hive
horrible.
mind is definitely...
You've seen, what are those fucking bugs called? Tom probably knows. The little microscopic bug that's like a terror. It's it looks like a worm, but it's got like the face of a fucking... like a world worm.
What the hell?
Oh, you're talking about you're talking about a mod worm.
No,
Like sandworms are a type of mod worm. It's a worm that's got like teeth on one end.
It's microscopic, so it's like a.
Oh, it's a water bear.
A nematode?
No.
A nematocyst?
It's a water bear.
No, it's not a tardigrade. He's not talking about a tardigrade.
I might be talking about that.
I think it's a nematode. Like, those things? Like
I am
nematodes?
talking about a tardigrade.
Okay.
That thing's ugly as hell. And
Those are microscopic, parasitic, flesh-eating worms, too.
Am
They're
I right?
fun.
You talking about a water bear?
no,
Oh.
maybe.
No.
I don't know. Is that a water bear?
Yeah.
It's
This
a
is a water
tardigrade.
bear.
Tardigrade, yeah, that's a water bear.
Okay.
That's
Yeah,
a water
look at-
bear.
Look at that ugly bastard. I mean, you think
They're adorable. Oh my god.
no?
They're so
It
cute.
looks like a really old potato.
Oh, come on. It's so
that has a
cute.
mouth. No,
It's
I
a
can't. I
potato with a
can't.
mouth.
I can't. If that thing was the size of like a rhino, I would shit. Like it would. It's just no.
Yes,
I-
if it was
I
the
would
size of a
shit.
rhino,
I
I
would
would shit
shit.
too.
I would just shit.
Yeah, everywhere. It'd just be like bad grandpa.
So, is that a rhino-sized tardigrade?
Yeah. So, there's no thinking behind that, you know? I don't know, unless you believe in God. And he's like, yeah, I want to be an asshole and make a tardigrade.
Well, so-
it looks like a demon.
So the difference
Australia.
is the hive mind is a conscious entity that is, it's a collection of conscious entities. It's a collection that makes a conscious entity that is making decisions to be more effective at warfare. And again, all of this stuff is as awful as it is. It all makes them more effective at combat. All of it does. Flesh hooks. If you shoot, all your weapons are gone. Or you're fighting 4 enemies and you fire flesh hooks into the 5th, and then you drag it to your body. Well, now it's attached to you, and when you get to a digestive pool, you can just shake it loose. You don't have to go back and get it. It's just there. Oh man, can you imagine
being that
some
guardsman?
You're just like massive. You're just still alive the entire time.
You're just hit with the flesh hook, and the little Hormagaun's just like chilling, walking through the acid vat. You're just like, God, please, like, don't do this to me.
A Tyranid land train that's back is covered in barbed spikes, and it just picks up guardsmen and impales them. Yeah, they're even still alive. It's they're like firing. They're still trying to get away and fire their weapons.
Oh my god!
See, I just think of anything that's using the hooks as just like really overweight.
Like guardsmen too are like the absolute like minimum wage earners, right, in the 41st millennium.
Yeah, you are making the least amount of money.
They are making that $7.25 federal minimum, right?
They're like
and they are
in a football game.
Exactly. They're like fast food workers, They're the ones that are getting like the abuse of the drive-through. They got to change the fryer oil at the end of the night, and they're here being eaten by bugs. Like,
and the Tyranids just showed up to order food.
Right? Like they are dinner.
They're the ones that show up at 2 a.m. like, I want a double meat.
You're like the Imperial Guard is not like
Tyranids,
they're not paid enough to care. Yeah. They're the ones who have to like answer the drive-through at like 7:30 a.m. when somebody's like asking like, hey, they're like, we would like to kill you now, and you're like, ma'am, this is a Wendy's, and like,
like fuck you mean the ice cream machine ain't working?
You're like, dude, it's
what do you mean you don't spin? What do you mean you don't serve breakfast afternoon?
Yeah, that's the Imperial Guard. That's their whole thing.
Things not to tell a Carnifex. We don't serve breakfast afternoon. It's probably on that list.
It's 6 a.m. The chili is not ready. You cannot have a Frosty right now.
What do you mean?
Let me talk to your manager.
How much bacon is on the Baconator?
Family.
Did we just
I'm always thumping.
Why are you calling me a thumper?
I'm always thumping.
What?
All right, good. We've offended Henry Cavill by talking shit on custodes, and we've offended Vin Diesel by talking about how.
So I learned something about Henry Cavill the other day, and I was talking to my girlfriend about it, and I was like, guess I know what I am now. Apparently, the people who are fans of Henry Cavill are called the Cavalry.
No. No.
They
This is why people
Look
come to the podcast for 3 reasons. Marky's dirty jokes are incredibly corny jokes, like the one that was just told, and lore. In that order.
I literally looked at her dead in the eye, and I was like, sign me up.
I just would have been like, just shut your dirty mouth. Why would you tell me that? Why would you ruin my day like this? The cavalry.
I love it.
'Cause
I'm
now you
using
are
it
one.
in the future.
That's besides the point, Tom, okay?
Dude, if Henry Cavill showed up and was like, let me give you a back rub, I'd be like, do it.
Where's the oil?
Fucking do it.
Wow.
I'm sorry, Daddy. I'm sorry. What, Daddy? Sorry.
Are you gonna be dressed as a custode while you give me a back massage?
That's my next Guess What Neckbeard episode. The Custodes.
It's Custodes?
Yeah.
Oh my god. Have the, like, whatever. I don't know. Just incorporate, like, Repentia and Henry Cavill.
Oh gosh, we went into the Repentia pretty hard in the Sisters of Battle episode.
Did you go into it as hard as Henry Cavill would?
I'm pretty sure the Repentia go pretty. I can't even tell my joke. It's
how hard did he go?
Oh no!
Double-handed eviscerator. It's their. I'm just saying the weapon they use. It's not my fault.
Eviscerator. I hardly knew her.
Nice.
I'm good.
I really hope Henry Cavill listens to this.
The Sisters of Battle episode is going to be so hard to get
It's
through
going to be
now.
real bad. It's going to be real bad.
It's gonna be real hard.
Every other.
Real hard.
So is the Custode episode, honestly. Like, it's going to be.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, man.
So how do you shower in that thing? Just out of curiosity. Ryan, I'm going to need you to do that research. All right. I need to know.
How do you shower in the Custodes outfit?
Yeah.
Isn't it just a loincloth?
Well, first you have to read off all the names as you remove your armor.
Oh.
All right. Who wants to be a Ultramarines chief librarian?
That sounds like a job for Tom.
Yeah.
Oh my god, Eviscerator. I hardly knew her.
Oh no.
That was probably by far the best one ever.
You're welcome. I'm sure everybody hates me now that listens to the pod.
Oh, I guarantee you that's going to be one of the things people are going to want me to like do a little animation of. Come on, dude.
Oh yeah. Just be like, Marky, just shut your dirty mouth, dude.
As I looked into its dead black eyes, I saw the terrible sentience it had in place of a soul. Behind that was the steel will of its leader. Further still, I could feel its primogenitor coldly assessing me from the void. And looking back from the deepest recesses of the alien's mind, I perceived what I could only describe as an immortal hunger. We can slay the Tyranids on our worlds, blast their fleets from space, grind their armies to torn and ruined fragments, but the hunger, that is beyond our ability to slay.
That was Varro Tigurius, Ultramarine
part of it was.
chief of
Part of it was.
Ultramarines chief librarian. That was
I'm fucking
That
crying,
sentence, dude. Jesus
I'm fucking-
Christ.
if all of you just listening to the podcast would like to watch this on
Oh, you have
Patreon, you're gonna get several takes of none of us being able to keep our shit
to.
together.
Dude, I lost it.
100%.
Oh, dude, it hurts. Fucking fuck.
So the next weapon is the Barbed Strangler. This simple but devastating weapon shunts a barbed seed from its gestation sac to its muscular barrel.
Fucking here we go again.
Oh god.
Sorry, what?
Bring
Within-
gestation sacks into this?
Yep. Within which the seed begins to grow at a grossly accelerated pace. Launched by the muscle spasm, this projectile continues to expand as it hurtles through the air, erupting into a flaying mass of hooked tendrils that puncture flesh, rip out eyes, and entangle weapons to lash around throats before constricting everything in savagery. They are especially effective
Sounds fun.
weapons against massed and light armored prey. So
Can't
I'm
imagine
sorry.
shoots
I'm sorry, but that whole first
Like a
part of
bolo.
that is literally about something nutting.
Oh yeah, no, it's a lot
That
of
was
their
the
weapons.
big
A lot
nut.
of their weapons are.
Yeah. let me nut a spider web at
Why
you.
is-
Hold on.
Why is everything activated by a dick twitch? That's what I
Yeah.
want to know. Like that, everything's like that's what it
Tyranids are
sounds
just
like.
That's
walking
all-
around like coming
it's all
constantly.
muscle.
Yeah.
It's all
Every
muscle
time
Yeah,
they-
spasms.
it's like the
Every time
tree.
they
What's
shoot
that?
a gun, they're like,
You're like, why
Why
do
do
you
you make
make
that
that
noise?
sound every time
what
you
we
pull the
think
trigger?
Tyranids are. We think they're scary, like monsters sounding. Really, they're just
No.
It's the horny monster. All
Yep.
of them. What about the Hormigons? They don't.
So
got
it's
guns.
that
What muscle twitch?
it's
do they
the
have?
so you know you bring up the whole idea of like wow.
That's the noise.
So the whole idea of like all these muscle spasms and like twitches and contractions are causing damage, like that in our minds, we go like, well, that doesn't make any sense because like obviously a gun is more powerful than a punch. Well, that to a human,
Oh, that's a booty hole.
to a human, that's true. But think of like mantis shrimp. They've got that explosive reaction.
That punch.
That's just a punch. And that contact point can be like hotter than the surface of a sun for a split second or whatever. So like that's the same mentality, is that these incredibly violent muscle reactions are causing everything, which really does. It comes down to like how much force is in a cough, how much force is in a nut.
I was gonna say how much force is in the orgasm. All right, cool.
So next up are venom cannons.
When I
What's it?
sneeze, my face explodes. I
Right.
don't know.
35 miles an hour. So venom cannons fire shards of concentrated and crystallized acid coated in metallic residue and launched at incredible speeds. Even the lighter breed of venom cannon is highly effective at punching through well-armored targets. Meanwhile, the heavier variant launches its weightier projectile at hypersonic speeds. The tank-killing rounds wreathed in electrostatic charges that detonate upon impact. So here's that thing where like some of their bioweapons incorporate metal because there's metallic residue.
What did you say? It's girthier
Yep.
round? What was
Weightier. I did
second
not
one?
say girthy.
I
sorry.
literally immediately went girthier.
Oh, you're gonna lose it.
Like, I'm
you're gonna lose it
sorry.
on the next one. The impaler cannon.
Oh boy.
There- This cruel weapon fires chitinous harpoons that are more than capable of punching through even tank armor. At the base of each projectile nestles a parasitic shard beast that feeds off of the projectile's internal fluids until the moment the weapon is fired. At this point, the shard beast's innards are torn out, leaving its trailing fin-like projectiles that it uses to steer the shard into the body of the victim during its last moments of life. So impaler cannons are the ones that can fire without line of sight.
A shark beast.
Why do they have to use words like nestles?
Shark beast.
Oh, I know.
Like why do they have to like?
'Cause
they're
it's
like,
all-
the
it's
moist, the moist bug nestles its way in the
I like that.
the base of
Yeah.
the shaft.
It's
of the,
it's all body. It's all body horror. It's all the
Mhm.
things that make us vaguely disgusted about our normal bodies.
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it makes
Which is why we fall back to gross kindergarten humor to react to it all.
sense. Dude, it's hard not to,
Come on,
man.
it's that-
No, we all do it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but I mean, I'm
Uh-huh.
the worst.
Did you just hear what
Yeah.
I had to fucking read? Like,
Dude, I know. I know.
So
Jesus Christ.
It was really hard for me to
Oh
get
my
through that,
God.
dude.
For
I'm
you.
telling you. Yeah, it was real hard, dude.
says scything talons. Many Tyranid warrior organisms employ sizable deadly blade limbs to hack, tear, and impale their victims at close quarters. Such weapons rarely exhibit any degree of subtlety, employing the simple expediency of putting massive strength of muscle and sinew behind a long, rigid talon of razor-sharp chitin. Yet no warrior who ever saw these scything talons rip through an entire rank of screaming victims before tossing their bloodied and mangled remains through the air would ever mistake simplicity for its ineffectiveness. Bone swords. Grown from dense chitin, bone swords have a symbiotic graft into their hilts. The small gibbet of neurotransmissive flesh takes care of regrowing the bone sword's organic blade should it be damaged. Moreover, its web of nerve tendrils are embedded along the length of the weapon, transmitting and amplifying the synaptic energies of the wielder into a lethal field that can extinguish a victim's life energies with every blow. This effect is amplified by the proximity to the weapon of the same kind, making paired bone swords especially deadly. Rending claw. These oversized claws are rendered particularly deadly by their organic sheaths of diamond hard and wickedly sharp chitin. With the tailored muscle and sinew of a Tyranid warrior organism behind them, rending claws are quite capable of ripping through adamantine and bonded ceramite as though it were nothing more than tattered cloth. The damage such vicious claws can inflict on living flesh can best be described as catastrophic, with a single swipe usually sufficient to disembowel and tear the throat of any prey. Bone mace, which I feel is less funny than it should be, but should be more funny than it is. This
Not after
unsubtle...
what we've heard. Oh, sorry. Like, not after what we've heard tonight, dude.
Right. Bone mace. This unsettled mass of knurled bone, chitin spikes, and coiled tendons is most often seen grafted to hulking carnifexes. A dense tangle of tensile ligaments connect the bone mace organism to its monstrous wielder. Their steely strength and instinctive whipcord contractions further augmenting the already colossal might of these siege beasts as it swings this mace at its victims. A solid blow from this weapon can easily stave into fortified bunkers, smash a battle tank onto its side, or pulp any warrior unfortunate enough to be in its path. Spore mines, either launched from a biovore sporecaster organism or atmospherically seeded in their thousands from the bellies of hive ships. Spore mines are living bombs. They possess internal gas bladders that allow them to drift across the battlefield, trailing their sensitive tendrils behind them as they feel for vibrations that signal the proximity of a prey organism. Once they're triggered, the spore mine detonates themselves, unleashing a violent storm of chitinous shrapnel and sprays of toxins. Venomous or acidic fluids can also be utilized and used against their victims.
It's like a jellyfish.
Yeah, they're like a brain jellyfish. So that will wrap it up for our second episode dedicated to the Tyranids. We will pick it up with part 3, where we will go into the second Tyrannic War, which was against Hive Fleet Kraken. And then we will dive into the bioforms themselves, some of the different things that can carry these crazy-ass weapons. However, if you want to get in contact with us about lore, your own short stories, or even your own spooky stories, you can reach us by email at underthehiveofmadness@gmail.com or jimdarkgaming@gmail.com. You can also join us over on Discord. Not only can you talk with us about lore, hobby, and tactics of Warhammer 40k, but you can get involved on topics spanning from Warhammer Age of Sigmar to the video games that we are currently playing. You can also find Under the Hive of Madness on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok, or over at our website, www.underthehiveofmadness.com. Emmy, would you like to let our listeners know where they can find you and your current work and current projects?
Sure thing. I am at Coral Pecan on Instagram, TikTok. Those would be my main socials at this moment. You can also find me on Moxfield. You can see all my Magic the Gathering decks listed there.
We will have spellings to all of our stuff as well as Emmy's stuff in our show notes so you can connect with us easier. Emmy is also part of our Discord community, so I'm sure you guys could probably ping her there if you would like to get in contact with her through one of our general chats. Are you doing commissions anymore, or...
Yes.
I know you said some D&D commissions. Are you taking any?
They're over. I am doing AOS, 40k, Battletech, D&D, Malifaux, whatever you want painted. We'll talk.
Help the podcast grow by liking and reviewing us wherever you get your podcast fix. Our home is Spotify and Anchor, but you can also find us on Apple, Google, Stitcher, and many more. Emmy will be back for future episodes, along with helping us judge our hosts in the Hosts Painting Contest. If you would like to see that sort of content grow and expand, you can find us on Patreon at www.patreon.com/underthehiveofmadness. All Patreon members get access to a video podcast, so you can see all of our lovely faces. That also has minimal editing, so all of our blunders and bloopers, and there are a couple this time,
There are a few.
viewable there.
Yep, there are a few.
All Patreon levels also get access to our quarterly painting contest, plus we've got other perks at higher levels, so I suggest you go and check it out. Tune in right here to keep up with all things Murder Ball. We're deep into the playoffs, hoping, of course, that that rat catchers pull up ahead and maybe take home that trophy this year. What do you guys think? They going to pull ahead, or are we just holding out?
Well, you know, the rat catchers, the funny thing about them is they suck. So
They got into the playoffs, Marky.
Yeah, but, you know, sometimes it's not their time. It's just
I need to find my vuvuzela.
Tearing down more walls than they can ever possibly put up. Bringing in the truthiest vibrations of rebellion. We are 665.66 UHMR Chemrat Radio. Reminding all of you Chemrats, Hive Mice, and Sump Ghoulies to keep those dials fixed right here. Same ratty frequency for some of the same ratty-ass attitude. Inside you, there are two rippers. One of them is hungry. The other one is also hungry. I don't know how to end this, but something about the four-armed emperor.
Rock and roll.
Motherfucker.